On the night of our 25th wedding anniversary, my husband looked me in the eyes and said, "I'm tired." We didn't sleep together. At midnight, I heard moans coming from the maid's room. Let me pause here. I'm so grateful you're listening to my story. If this video resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story of revenge has traveled across the world. Your support means everything to me. Now, let me tell you exactly what happened that night, because after 25 years of marriage, our anniversary became the night I discovered my husband's ultimate betrayal. Crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across our bedroom as I slipped into the emerald silk nightgown I'd been saving for this very evening. 25 years. Quarter of a century. Silver anniversary. The words felt sacred on my tongue as I applied a final touch of lipstick in the vanity mirror. The same vanity where Philip used to watch me get ready for our dates when we were young and foolishly in love. The celebration dinner had been perfect, or so I thought. Our closest friends and family gathered at Le Bernardin, champagne flowing, speeches about enduring love echoing through the private dining room. Philip had even stood up, his salt and pepper hair catching the candlelight, and toasted to my beautiful wife Monique, who has been my anchor through every storm. The room erupted in applause, and I felt my cheeks flush with pride and joy. But now, as I turned from the mirror expecting to see my husband's admiring gaze, I found only empty space where he should have been waiting for me. "Philip!" I called softly, my voice carrying a hint of playful anticipation. I'd planned this night for months. The new lingerie, the champagne chilling in our bedroom, the playlist of songs from our wedding reception queued up on the sound system. After raising 3 children and building careers, we rarely had nights that belonged entirely to us anymore. I found him in his study, still in his dress shirt but with his bow tie undone, loosened around his neck like a noose. He was staring at his computer screen, the blue light casting harsh shadows under his eyes. "Honey, aren't you coming to bed?" I asked, stepping into the doorway. The silk of my nightgown whispered against my skin, and I felt suddenly vulnerable, exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the revealing cut of the fabric. Philip glanced up, his eyes skating over me without the warmth I expected, without the desire I'd hoped to kindle. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Guilt? Regret? But it vanished so quickly I convinced myself I'd imagined it. "I'm exhausted, Monique," he said, turning back to the screen. "The dinner ran so late, and I have that early meeting tomorrow with the Singapore investors. I think I'll just crash in the guest room tonight so I don't wake you when my alarm goes off." The words hit me like ice water. "But, Philip, it's our anniversary night." "I know, sweetheart, and dinner was wonderful. But we're not 25 anymore, are we?" He stood up, pecked me on the cheek with the perfunctory kiss of a stranger, and began loosening his cufflinks. "Tomorrow night, I promise. We'll do something special tomorrow." I stood there in my emerald silk, feeling foolish and invisible. 25 years of marriage, and he was treating our anniversary like any other Thursday night. I wanted to argue, to remind him of all the early mornings I'd accommodated over the years, all the business trips that took precedence over our time together. But the words stuck in my throat like thorns. "Of course," I whispered. "Get some rest." I retreated to our bedroom, the champagne bottle sweating condensation onto the silver tray, the candles I'd lit earlier burning down to stubs. I blew them out one by one, each flame dying with a small hiss that sounded like my heart breaking in miniature increments. Sleep eluded me. I lay in our king-sized bed, suddenly enormous and cold without Philip beside me, staring at the ceiling and wondering when we'd started living like roommates instead of lovers. The silk nightgown that had made me feel beautiful hours earlier now felt like a costume for a play no one wanted to watch. The house settled into its familiar nighttime sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the distant hum of traffic on Madison Avenue. Our home was a testament to our success, a 5-story brownstone on the Upper East Side, filled with art we'd collected from our travels and furniture chosen with care over decades of building a life together. And then, at exactly midnight, I remember checking the glowing numbers on my bedside clock, I heard it. A soft moan, muffled but unmistakably human. Unmistakably intimate. I sat up in bed, my heart beginning to pound. The sound was coming from the direction of the 4th floor where Cynthia, our housekeeper, had her room. Sweet Cynthia, who'd been with us for 3 years now, who helped me plan dinner parties and remembered exactly how Philip liked his coffee. Cynthia, who was 26 years old with the kind of natural beauty that didn't need makeup to shine. Another moan, followed by what sounded like whispered words I couldn't make out. My hands were shaking as I slipped out of bed, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. The house felt different now, charged with a terrible electricity that made the air thick and hard to breathe. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe Cynthia was sick, or perhaps she was on the phone with a boyfriend. But as I crept up the narrow staircase to the 4th floor, each step creaking despite my careful movements, I heard something that stopped my heart entirely. Philip's laugh. Low and intimate and absolutely unmistakable. The same laugh he used to share with me in the early days of our marriage, when we'd stay up until dawn making love and planning our future together. The laugh that had once been mine alone. I pressed myself against the wall outside Cynthia's door, my silk nightgown cold against my skin, and listened to my husband of 25 years destroying everything we'd built together, one whispered endearment at a time. Standing there in that hallway, my world crumbling around me, I couldn't help but think about how we got here. How 25 years of unwavering devotion had led to this moment of ultimate betrayal. Let me take you back to where it all began, because to understand the depth of this betrayal, you need to know what I sacrificed for this man. I was 23 when I met Philip Hartwell at a gallery opening in Soho. Fresh out of Columbia with my MBA, I was working at a prestigious marketing firm, climbing the corporate ladder with the fierce determination that had gotten me through business school on scholarships. I had plans, ambitions, dreams that stretched far beyond the confines of traditional expectations. Philip was 30 then, already establishing himself as a real estate developer with an eye for transforming historic properties into luxury spaces. He was charming, sophisticated, and he pursued me with the kind of old-world courtship that made my girlfriends swoon with envy. Flowers every Friday, handwritten notes tucked into my purse, weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard where he'd rent entire cottages just so we could have privacy. "You're going to be my wife someday," he told me on our 3rd date, with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. And God help me, I believed him. More than that, I wanted it. We married 2 years later in a ceremony that made the society pages of Town and Country. I wore my grandmother's pearls and a Vera Wang gown, and Philip looked at me like I was the only woman in the world. Our honeymoon in Tuscany lasted 3 weeks, and I remember thinking this was what fairy tales must feel like when they came true. The first sacrifice came barely a year into our marriage. I'd been offered a promotion that would have made me the youngest senior marketing director in my firm's history. It was everything I'd worked for, but it would have required extensive travel to Europe, months away from home-building campaigns for luxury brands across the continent. "But darling, we're trying to start a family," Philip said when I told him about the opportunity. "How can we have children if you're always on planes to Paris and Milan? Besides, my business is really taking off now. We don't need the money." So I turned it down. I convinced myself it was the right choice, that love meant making compromises, that my career could wait while we built our life together. Philip's real estate empire was indeed flourishing, and within 2 years we'd moved into the brownstone that would become our family home. Our first son, Marcus, arrived when I was 27. I took maternity leave and never went back to the marketing firm. Philip suggested I work part-time from home, maybe take on some freelance projects, just to keep your mind sharp, sweetheart. But between feeding schedules and sleepless nights, freelance work became impossible. Before I knew it, I'd been out of the corporate world for 3 years. Then came Christopher 2 years later, followed by our daughter Sarah 3 years after that. Pregnancy meant another year away from any career ambitions, another year of my professional skills growing rusty while Philip's business expanded internationally. He opened offices in London, Hong Kong, Dubai. The money flowed in, and our lifestyle expanded to match his success. "You're so lucky," my friends would tell me at school events and charity luncheons. Philip provides so well for you. You get to focus on the children without worrying about deadlines and office politics. And maybe I was lucky. Our children thrived in private schools, summer camps in the Hamptons, ski trips to Aspen. I threw myself into being the perfect wife and mother, organizing dinner parties for Philip's business associates, managing our household staff, sitting on the boards of various charities. I became known in our social circle as the woman who could plan a flawless event for 200 people while homeschooling her daughter through a difficult math unit. But late at night, when Philip was traveling for business and the children were finally asleep, I'd sometimes sit in my study, the small room Philip had designated as Monique's space, and wonder what had happened to the ambitious young woman who'd once dreamed of running her own marketing empire. "You could always go back to work when the kids are older," Philip would say whenever I brought up feeling unfulfilled. "But right now, they need you. I need you. Who else could manage our life the way you do?" And he was right, in a way. I did manage everything. I coordinated his travel schedules, remembered his mother's birthday, made sure his favorite shirts were always pressed and ready. I knew exactly how he liked his coffee in the morning and which of his colleagues' wives couldn't be seated together at dinner parties. I learned to read his moods, to anticipate his needs, to smooth over any friction in his professional or personal relationships. When we hired Cynthia 3 years ago, I was the one who interviewed her, checked her references, trained her in Philip's particular preferences. She was a sweet girl from the Philippines, earnest and hardworking, with plans to send money back to her family while she saved for nursing school. I liked her immediately, appreciated her attention to detail and the genuine warmth she brought to our household. "She's wonderful," I told Philip after Cynthia's first week with us. "The children adore her and she's so eager to learn everything properly." Philip barely looked up from his newspaper. "Whatever you think is best, darling. You handle the household so perfectly." Looking back now, I realize how completely I designed my life around Philip's needs, Philip's schedule, Philip's success. My days began with preparing his breakfast exactly as he preferred it, and ended with ensuring his clothes were laid out for the next morning's meetings. I'd become so skilled at anticipating what he wanted that I'd forgotten entirely what I wanted for myself. The irony wasn't lost on me, standing there in my silk nightgown outside my maid's bedroom. For 25 years I'd made myself indispensable to Philip's life, and somehow in the process I'd made myself invisible as a woman worthy of desire and fidelity. All those business trips I'd supported, understanding when he missed anniversary dinners because of crucial meetings. All those late nights at the office I'd accepted without question, bringing him dinner on elegant trays and tiptoeing out so as not to disturb his important work. All those times I'd put his needs first, his career first, his reputation first. And this was how he repaid 25 years of unwavering devotion. With moans in the darkness, with intimate laughter shared with our employee, with the kind of passion he no longer brought to our marriage bed. As I stood there listening to my husband betray everything we'd built together, one thought crystallized in my mind with devastating clarity. I had sacrificed my entire identity to become the perfect wife for a man who didn't deserve my loyalty. But what I heard next would prove that his betrayal ran even deeper than I could have imagined. I pressed my ear closer to Cynthia's door, my heart hammering so loudly I was afraid they might hear it through the thin wood. What I heard in those next few moments would shatter not just my marriage, but my understanding of the man I devoted my entire adult life to. "God, you're so beautiful," Philip's voice drifted through the door, thick with desire I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "So much more alive then." He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. The implication hung in the air like poison. More alive than me. More beautiful than his wife of 25 years. Cynthia's soft laugh followed, musical and young. "Mr. Philip, you make me feel so special. Like I matter to you." "You do matter. More than you know." Tenderness in his voice was what broke me. This wasn't just physical betrayal. This was emotional intimacy, the kind Philip and I used to share in the early years of our marriage. He was giving her pieces of himself that he'd withdrawn from me so gradually I hadn't even noticed they were gone. My hands trembled as I reached for the door handle. Part of me wanted to burst in, to catch them in the act and scream until the neighbors called the police. But another part of me, the part that had been trained for 25 years to be reasonable, to be understanding, to put Philip's needs first, whispered that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe there was some explanation. But then I heard Philip say something that made my blood turn to ice. Monique suspects nothing. She's so busy with her charity committees and her shopping lunches, she barely notices when I'm home anyway. Tonight was perfect. She actually believed I was tired from the anniversary dinner. My anniversary dinner. Our celebration. He had planned this betrayal, used our special night as cover for his deception. Cynthia's voice was softer now, almost guilty. I feel terrible sometimes. She's been so kind to me, helping me with my English, buying me those beautiful dresses for church. She treats me like family. Don't feel guilty, sweetheart, Philip murmured, and I could hear the rustle of sheets, the creak of bed springs. Monique and I haven't been truly happy in years. We're just going through the motions. What we have is real. Those words hit me like physical blows. Going through the motions. The years of unhappiness he'd never shared with me, never tried to fix. While I'd been planning romantic anniversary dinners and buying silk nightgowns, he'd been planning his escape into the arms of our 26-year-old housekeeper. I had to see them. I had to witness this betrayal with my own eyes because some part of my mind still couldn't accept that this was really happening. 25 years of marriage, 3 children together, a lifetime of shared memories and dreams. Surely that counted for something. Surely Philip wouldn't throw it all away for a girl young enough to be our daughter. The door was slightly ajar, carelessly left open in their passion. Through the narrow gap, I could see Cynthia's small bedside lamp casting warm light across the room I'd decorated for her when she first moved in. I'd chosen the pale yellow curtains myself, wanting her to feel welcome in our home. What I saw through that crack in the door destroyed me. Philip was lying on his side, his arm around Cynthia, stroking her long black hair with the same gentle touch he'd once used on me. She was wearing one of the silk camisoles I'd bought her for Christmas, the delicate pink one that had looked so innocent on the hanger at Bergdorf Goodman. Now it looked anything but innocent as it clung to her young curves. But it wasn't the physical intimacy that shattered me, it was the expression on Philip's face. He looked at her with wonder, with genuine affection, with the kind of adoration I'd been craving from him for years. His eyes were soft and warm, completely focused on her as if she were the most precious thing in his world. When was the last time he'd looked at me like that? When was the last time he touched my hair with such reverence, such desire? I love you, Cynthia whispered, and my knees nearly buckled. I love you too, Philip replied without hesitation. More than I ever thought possible. Those 3 words, the same 3 words he'd spoken to me just hours earlier during his anniversary toast, felt like daggers piercing my heart. How could the same phrase carry such different weights? His I love you to the dinner guests had been performative, obligatory. This one was real. I watched them kiss, soft and lingering, and something inside me died. This wasn't a moment of weakness, a drunken mistake, a midlife crisis that could be forgiven and forgotten. This was a full relationship, complete with emotional intimacy and declarations of love. Philip hadn't just cheated on me, he'd replaced me. The rational part of my mind cataloged the evidence. How many times had Philip claimed to be working late? How many business trips had he taken recently? How many evenings had he spent in his study while I went to bed alone, thinking he was reviewing contracts when he was probably planning his next encounter with Cynthia? How many times had I praised Cynthia's dedication to our household, not realizing she was dedicating herself to my husband as well as our home? The signs had been there, glaring in hindsight. Cynthia's new confidence over the past few months, the way she'd started wearing makeup around the house, how she'd begun asking about Philip's schedule with just a little too much interest. The expensive perfume she'd been wearing, perfume I'd assumed she'd bought with her own money, never imagining my husband had been the one purchasing her gifts. And Philip, God, how could I have been so blind? His sudden interest in working out, the new cologne, the way he'd started keeping his phone face down during dinner. The business trips that seemed to multiply, always to cities where he'd never needed to travel before. All of it made sense now, fitting together like pieces of a puzzle I'd been too trusting to assemble. As I stood there watching my husband make love to another woman in my own home on my 25th wedding anniversary, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The loyal, understanding, accommodating wife I'd been for a quarter century was dying, replaced by something harder, colder, more calculating. I could confront them now, burst through the door screaming and crying, give them the dramatic scene they probably expected. I could call my children, wake up the whole house, make Philip choose between his family and his mistress in front of everyone. Or I could be smart about this. I could gather evidence, plan my response, make sure that when I struck back it would be devastating and complete. 25 years of marriage had taught me one thing above all others. Philip respected strength and despised weakness. If I wanted to win this war, and make no mistake, this had become a war, I needed to fight it on his terms. But first, I needed to hear more. I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal ran, how long it had been going on, and what they'd been saying about me while they destroyed my life behind closed doors. So I stayed in that hallway, my silk nightgown growing cold against my skin, and listened to my husband plan my humiliation with the girl I'd trusted like a daughter. What I heard next would give me all the ammunition I needed for the revenge that was already taking shape in my mind. But as I stood there listening, something primal took over. 25 years of suppressed anger, of swallowed disappointments, of being the perfect accommodating wife suddenly erupted inside me like a volcano that had been dormant too long. I couldn't wait. I couldn't plan. I couldn't be strategic. I pushed the door open. The hinges creaked softly, but it might as well have been a gunshot in the sudden silence that followed. Philip and Cynthia sprang apart like guilty teenagers, but there was nowhere to hide. No way to pretend this was anything other than what it was. Philip's face went through a series of expressions in rapid succession: shock, guilt, calculation, and finally defiance. Cynthia pulled the sheet up to cover herself, her dark eyes wide with terror and shame. "Monique," Philip said, his voice carefully controlled in that way that meant he was about to lie to me. "This isn't what it looks like." The audacity of that statement, delivered while he was naked in our employee's bed on our anniversary night, almost made me laugh. Almost. Instead, I felt something ice-cold settle in my chest, a calm fury that was far more dangerous than screaming would have been. "Really, Philip?" My voice came out steady, almost conversational. "Because it looks like my husband of 25 years is fucking our housekeeper while I wait in our bedroom wearing the anniversary lingerie I bought for him." Philip flinched at my language. In all our years together, I'd rarely used profanity, preferring to express myself with the refined vocabulary that befitted the wife of a successful businessman. But refined vocabulary seemed inadequate for this moment. Cynthia began to cry, soft, broken sobs that might have moved me to sympathy under different circumstances. "Mrs. Monique, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did want to fuck my husband," I replied, my tone still that eerie calm that was frightening even to me. "In my house, while I slept downstairs, on my anniversary night." "Monique, please," Philip said, sitting up and reaching for his discarded shirt. Even caught in the most compromising position possible, he was trying to regain control of the situation. "Let's go to our room and discuss this rationally." "Discuss what rationally?" I asked, stepping further into the room. "Your rational decision to betray our marriage vows? Your rational choice to humiliate me in my own home? Or perhaps your rational plan to tell me you love her more than you ever thought possible?" Philip's face went white. "You heard that?" "I heard everything." I turned to look at Cynthia, who was still sobbing into the sheet. "I heard how you feel terrible about my kindness to you. I heard how Philip thinks I suspect nothing because I'm so busy with my meaningless charity work. I heard him tell you that we haven't been happy in years. News to me, by the way, since I've spent the last quarter century trying to make him happy. Monique, you're upset and you have every right to be, Philip said, standing up and pulling on his pants. But if you'll just let me explain. Explain what? I interrupted. How long has this been going on? Months? Years? How many of your business trips were actually trips to hotel rooms with her? How many nights did I go to bed alone while you were 3 floors above me, making love to a girl young enough to be our daughter? Cynthia's sobs grew louder. Please, Mrs. Monique. It started 6 months ago. I tried to resist, but Mr. Philip was so kind to me and I was lonely and I thought... You thought what? I snapped, my composure finally cracking. You thought it would be fine to destroy a 25-year marriage because you were lonely? You thought I wouldn't mind sharing my husband with the girl I treated like family? That's enough, Monique, Philip said, his tone shifting to the authoritative voice he used in business meetings. You're scaring her. I'm scaring her? I stared at him in disbelief. Your wife catches you in bed with another woman and you're worried about her feelings? Philip had the grace to look ashamed for about half a second before his natural arrogance reasserted itself. Look, this situation isn't ideal, but we're all adults here. These things happen. We can work through this if you're willing to be reasonable. Reasonable, I repeated slowly. Like how reasonable you were when you decided to use our anniversary dinner as an alibi for this affair. Like how reasonable you were when you told me you were too tired to spend the night with your wife so you could spend it with our maid instead. It's not like that, Philip protested. Cynthia and I, what we have is special. It's not just physical. But we have a real connection. A real connection, I said, tasting the words like poison. Based on what? Her youth? Her willingness to sleep with a married man? Her complete dependence on your money and generosity? Cynthia looked up from her tears. It's not about money, Mrs. Monique. We love each other. Love. I almost did laugh then. Cynthia, do you know what love is? Love is what I gave Philip for 25 years. Love is sacrificing your career, your dreams, your entire identity to support someone else's success. Love is putting your husband's needs before your own every single day for a quarter century. What you have is infatuation with a man old enough to be your father who's using you to feel young again. Philip stepped forward, his face hardening. Don't take your bitterness out on her, Monique. This isn't Cynthia's fault. Of course not, I said. Nothing ever is anyone's fault in your world, is it, Philip? It's not your fault you cheated on your wife. It's not Cynthia's fault she seduced a married man. It's probably my fault for being such a terrible wife that you had to look elsewhere for happiness. I never said that, Philip replied, but I could see in his eyes that he was thinking it. You didn't have to say it. But you said plenty to her, didn't you? You told her I don't notice when you're home. You told her we're just going through the motions. You used our anniversary as cover for this betrayal. The room fell silent except for Cynthia's continued weeping. Philip stood there in his half-dressed state, looking for once in his life like he didn't know what to say. I realized in that moment that I had 2 choices. I could fall apart, beg him to choose me, promise to be better, more exciting, more like the young woman in his arms. Or I could choose dignity. I chose dignity. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice returning to that unnaturally calm tone. Cynthia, you have until morning to pack your things and leave. I'll give you 2 weeks severance, but I never want to see you in my home again. Mrs. Monique, please, Cynthia began. As for you, Philip, I continued, turning to my husband, congratulations. You've just destroyed 25 years of marriage for a 6-month affair with our employee. I hope it was worth it. Philip's jaw tightened. Monique, if you'll just calm down and think about this rationally. Oh, I am thinking rationally, I said. I'm thinking about how our children will react when they learn their father chose to humiliate their mother on her anniversary. I'm thinking about what our friends will say when they discover that Philip Hartwell, pillar of the community, was sneaking around with the help. I'm thinking about how this will look in divorce court. The word divorce hung in the air like a blade. Philip's face went pale. Monique, let's not do anything hasty. Hasty? I asked. Philip, you've been planning this betrayal for months. The only hasty thing here is my discovery of it. But don't worry, I won't be hasty in my response. I'm going to be very, very thorough. I turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. Oh, and Philip? Happy anniversary. As I walked back down to our bedroom, leaving them to deal with the wreckage of their exposed affair, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: power. For 25 years, I'd let Philip control the narrative of our marriage. I'd accepted his version of events, his priorities, his needs. Not anymore. By tomorrow morning, everyone would know exactly what kind of man Philip Hartwell really was. And I was going to make sure he paid for every single moment of humiliation he'd put me through. The war had begun, and I intended to win it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my study with a cup of tea that grew cold as I planned my strategy. By sunrise, I had a clear battle plan, and I was ready to execute it with surgical precision. The first call I made was to my eldest son Marcus at 7 a.m. sharp. Mom? Is everything okay? It's early for... Your father is having an affair with Cynthia, I said without preamble. I caught them together last night. On our anniversary. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice tight with controlled anger. Are you certain? I walked in on them, Marcus. In her bedroom. They told each other they were in love. That bastard, Marcus whispered, and I felt a surge of gratitude that my son's first instinct was to support me, not make excuses for his father. I'm filing for divorce today, I continued. I wanted you and your siblings to hear it from me first, before your father tries to spin this into something it's not. Mom, I'm so sorry. I can't believe he would do this to you. After everything you've sacrificed for our family. Within an hour, I'd called Christopher and Sarah. Their reactions were variations of Marcus's: shock, anger, and unwavering support for me. Sarah actually started crying on the phone. How could he do this to you, Mom? On your anniversary? With Cynthia? She's practically my age. Your father is having what some people call a midlife crisis, I said, though the words tasted bitter. Apparently, 25 years of marriage wasn't enough to keep him faithful. What can we do? How can we help? Just be prepared. Your father will try to make this my fault somehow. He'll say we grew apart, that I didn't understand him, that he was lonely. Don't let him rewrite history. By 9 a.m., I was sitting in the office of Catherine Morrison, the most ruthless divorce attorney in Manhattan. Catherine had a reputation for eviscerating unfaithful husbands, and her retainer fee was worth every penny. 25 years of marriage, 3 children, substantial assets, and he's cheating with the domestic help, Catherine said, taking notes as I recounted the previous night's events. This is going to be a massacre, Monique. In your favor, of course. I want everything, I said. The house, the assets, the business interests. I want him to understand that betraying me was the most expensive mistake of his life. We'll start with freezing the joint accounts and filing for exclusive use of the marital home, Catherine said. Do you have any evidence of the affair beyond what you witnessed? Not yet, but I will. This has been going on for 6 months. There will be credit card receipts, hotel bookings, gifts he bought her. A man like Philip always leaves a paper trail. Catherine smiled like a shark scenting blood. Leave that to my investigators. By tomorrow, we'll know every penny he spent on this girl and every lie he told to cover it up. While Catherine's team began their forensic examination of Philip's finances, I moved to phase 2 of my plan, social destruction. My first stop was lunch with Eleanor Pemberton, the unofficial queen of Manhattan society and the biggest gossip on the Upper East Side. Eleanor had been at our anniversary dinner just 2 nights before, toasting our enduring love and perfect marriage. Monique, darling, you look absolutely dreadful, Eleanor said as we settled into our usual table at the plaza. Are you feeling well? Actually, Eleanor, I'm devastated. I discovered something terrible after our anniversary dinner, and I need to tell you because I know you care about me and I don't want you to be blindsided by the rumors that will inevitably start circulating. Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes bright with anticipation. What happened, dear? Philip is having an affair with our housekeeper. I caught them together on our anniversary night. Eleanor's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat. No, not Philip. Not with the help. I'm afraid so. Apparently, this has been going on for months. While I was planning our anniversary celebration and believing in our marriage, my husband was planning his escape into the arms of a 26-year-old girl. That bastard, Eleanor hissed, and I knew the story would be all over Manhattan society within hours. Eleanor's network of wealthy socialites communicated faster than CNN when it came to scandal. My phone started ringing before I even left the restaurant. Margaret Ashford, Helen Sinclair, Victoria Chen, all pillars of our social circle, all calling to express their shock and outrage. Monique, I just heard from Eleanor. I cannot believe Philip would do such a thing to you. With the maid? How absolutely cliched and disgusting. You poor thing. After everything you've done for that man. The response was overwhelmingly in my favor, exactly as I'd hoped. In the world of Manhattan society, adultery was common but discretion was sacred. Cheating with someone from your own social class was regrettable but understandable. Cheating with the domestic help was unforgivable, a betrayal of class boundaries as much as marital vows. By evening, Philip was calling me frantically. Monique, what have you done? I've had 6 people call me today asking about some affair. Margaret Ashford actually hung up on me when I tried to explain. I told the truth, Philip. Isn't that what you wanted? You said last night that what you and Cynthia have is real. I thought you'd be proud to have people know about your great love story. This is insane. You're destroying my reputation over one mistake. One mistake. My voice was dangerously quiet. Philip, you've been having an affair for 6 months. That's not one mistake, that's 180 days of consecutive choices to betray our marriage. It's not that simple, and you know it. Monique, we've been having problems for years. We barely talk anymore. You're always busy with your committees and your friends. I felt like a stranger in my own home. There it was, the narrative I'd predicted. According to Philip, this was all my fault for being a neglectful wife. So, you decided the solution was to sleep with our employee? Not to talk to me about these supposed problems, not to suggest marriage counseling, not to even attempt to fix our relationship, just straight to adultery? I never meant for this to happen. Just developed naturally. Cynthia understood me in ways you haven't for years. I see. And did this natural development include telling her that I suspect nothing because I'm too busy with my meaningless activities? Did it naturally develop into using our anniversary as cover for your betrayal? Philip was quiet for a long moment. You've already made up your mind about this, haven't you? You're not going to forgive me or try to work through this. You're just going to destroy everything we built together. Philip, you destroyed everything we built together when you decided our 25-year marriage was worth less than 6 months of sex with a girl half your age. I'm simply making sure everyone knows who's responsible for the destruction. Fine, Philip said, his voice turning cold and businesslike. If you won't play it this way, I'll get my own lawyer. But don't expect me to make this easy for you. I wouldn't dream of it, I replied. But, Philip, your reputation in this city is already in ruins. By tomorrow, every country club, every charity board, every business associate will know exactly what kind of man you are. You can fight me in court if you want, but you've already lost the war. I hung up and immediately called Catherine Morrison. How quickly can we serve him with papers? They're already drawn up. We can have him served at his office tomorrow morning. The maximum public humiliation. Perfect. And the asset freeze? Effective immediately. He won't be able to access any joint accounts or move any significant money without court approval. If he wants to buy his girlfriend gifts, he'll have to use his pocket change. As I prepared for bed that second night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades, the satisfaction of being in control of my own narrative. For 25 years, Philip had dictated the terms of our marriage, our social life, our future. He'd made decisions and expected me to accommodate them, made promises and broken them when convenient, taken my loyalty for granted while planning his betrayal. But now the power dynamic had shifted completely. Philip was scrambling to control the damage while I was orchestrating it. He was making excuses while I was making sure everyone heard the truth. He was trying to salvage his reputation while I was systematically destroying it. And this was only the beginning. Tomorrow, when the divorce papers were served at his office in front of his colleagues and clients, Philip would understand that his affair had cost him far more than just his marriage. It had cost him his standing in the community, his social connections, and his ability to control the story. But I still had one more card to play, one that would ensure Philip and Cynthia understood the full consequences of their betrayal. And when I was done with them, they would realize that destroying a 25-year marriage carried a price neither of them was prepared to pay. The beautiful thing about karma is that it rarely needs help, but sometimes it appreciates a gentle nudge in the right direction. Within 3 weeks of my discovery, Philip and Cynthia's great love story began unraveling faster than a cheap sweater. It started with the practical realities of their situation. With the asset freeze in place, Philip couldn't access our joint accounts to fund his new lifestyle. The man who'd been taking Cynthia to expensive restaurants and buying her designer clothes suddenly found himself limited to his personal checking account and whatever cash he could scrape together. "She's costing me a fortune," Philip complained to our son Marcus during one of their increasingly strained phone conversations. Marcus, bless him, recorded the call and sent it to me immediately. "Dad, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on Mom with a girl half your age," Marcus replied coldly. "It's not about the money," Philip protested, though his tone suggested otherwise. "It's just complicated. Cynthia doesn't understand why I can't take her places anymore. She keeps asking when we can go back to Le Bernardin, when I'm going to buy her that bracelet I promised. Wow, Dad. True love really is beautiful, isn't it? But money was only part of their problem. The real issue was that their affair, which had thrived in secrecy and stolen moments, couldn't survive the harsh light of public exposure. I heard through Eleanor Pemberton's extensive network that Philip had tried to take Cynthia to several of our usual haunts, restaurants where we'd been regulars, clubs where he maintained memberships. The reception was decidedly chilly. They walked into Daniel, and the maitre d' actually seated them at the worst table in the house, Eleanor reported gleefully during one of our weekly lunches. Right by the kitchen doors. And when they tried to order wine, the sommelier informed them that Mr. Hartwell's account was under review. "How mortifying for them," I said, trying not to smile too broadly. "Oh, it gets better." Apparently, Cynthia started crying right there in the restaurant because she felt like everyone was staring at them. Which, of course, they were. The social ostracism was taking its toll on both of them, but in different ways. Philip was angry and defiant, convinced that everyone was being unreasonable about what he called his personal business. Cynthia, meanwhile, was discovering that being the other woman wasn't nearly as glamorous as the movies made it seem. My private investigator, a thorough professional named James Wright, provided regular updates on their deteriorating relationship. "They're fighting constantly," James reported during one of our meetings. "I've documented 17 separate arguments in public places over the past 2 weeks. Yesterday, she accused him of being ashamed of her. He accused her of being ungrateful after everything he's sacrificed for their relationship." "What kind of sacrifice?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Well, according to him, he's lost his wife, his social standing, and his access to his money all for love. According to her, he promised her a different life, and now she's living in a studio apartment in Queens while her reputation is destroyed." James showed me photographs of Cynthia looking tired and stressed, her beautiful face drawn with worry. The glamorous young woman who'd been wearing silk camisoles in my home just a month ago now looked haggard and desperate. She's been applying for housekeeping positions, James continued, but word has gotten around the domestic employment agencies. No one wants to hire the maid who broke up the Hartwell marriage. She's basically unemployable in Manhattan. I felt a brief pang of something that might have been sympathy. Then I remembered her soft laughter in Philip's arms and the feeling passed. But the most delicious piece of karma was yet to come. Philip, it turned out, was exactly the kind of man who would cheat on his wife of 25 years, which meant he was also exactly the kind of man who would cheat on his mistress of 6 months when someone younger and more exciting came along. Her name was Anastasia, and she was a 23-year-old Russian model Philip met at a gallery opening in Soho. According to James's surveillance, Philip told Anastasia that he was recently divorced and completely available. He's been seeing this girl for 2 weeks, James reported. Taking her to the same places he used to take Cynthia, using the same lines about being lonely and misunderstood. The man has absolutely no creativity when it comes to seduction. Does Cynthia know? Not yet, but she suspects something. She's been calling him constantly, and he's been avoiding her calls. Yesterday, I watched her follow him to a restaurant where he was having lunch with the Russian girl. She waited outside for 3 hours. Confrontation, when it finally came, was everything I could have hoped for and more. James captured it on video from across the street. Cynthia, looking desperate and wild-eyed, approached Philip and Anastasia as they left an expensive restaurant in Midtown. Even without audio, the body language told the story perfectly. Cynthia grabbed Philip's arm, clearly demanding an explanation. Philip tried to brush her off, obviously embarrassed to be seen with his former mistress in front of his new one. Anastasia looked confused and annoyed, probably wondering who this hysterical woman was and why she was ruining her date. The argument escalated quickly. Cynthia started crying and gesticulating wildly, pointing at Anastasia and then at herself. Philip's face grew red with anger and embarrassment. Anastasia stepped back, clearly wanting no part of this drama. Finally, Philip said something that made Cynthia step back as if he'd slapped her. Even from across the street, James could see the devastation on her face. She turned and walked away without another word, leaving Philip to explain to his new conquest why some random woman had just accused him of breaking her heart. The next day, Cynthia called our house. "Mrs. Monique?" Her voice was barely a whisper, broken and desperate. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to tell you something." "What is it, Cynthia?" "You were right. About everything. But Mr. Philip, he's with someone else now. Someone younger than me. He told her he was divorced, that he was free. He never mentioned me at all." I could hear her crying softly on the other end of the line. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Monique. I thought what we had was real. I thought he loved me. But I was just another thing for him to use and throw away. Like you said, I'm sorry you had to learn this lesson the hard way, Cynthia. He promised me so many things. He said he would leave you for me, that we would travel together, that he would take care of me. But when you found us out, everything changed. He started treating me like I was the problem. Like I had forced him to cheat on you. And now he won't even answer my calls. I lost my job, my reputation, my savings trying to keep up with the lifestyle he showed me. And for what? 6 months with a man who threw me away the moment someone better came along." Her voice broke completely. "I destroyed a 25-year marriage for 6 months with a man who never loved me at all. I'm so ashamed, Mrs. Monique. I'm so sorry for what I did to you." After I hung up, I sat in my study feeling something I hadn't expected, vindication mixed with sadness. Not sadness for Philip and Cynthia, but sadness for the naive woman I'd been just weeks before, the woman who'd believed in the sanctity of marriage, who'd trusted that 25 years of devotion meant something, who'd thought her husband was incapable of such cruelty. Philip and Cynthia had destroyed each other just as efficiently as they destroyed my marriage. He'd revealed himself to be the serial cheater he'd probably always been, and she'd learned that men who cheat with you will inevitably cheat on you. But their downfall, satisfying as it was only the beginning of my transformation. While they were busy destroying each other, I was busy rebuilding myself into something stronger, more independent, and more successful than I'd ever imagined possible. And the best part? I was just getting started. While Philip and Cynthia were busy destroying each other, I was discovering something remarkable. The woman I'd been before marriage was still there, buried under 25 years of putting someone else's dreams first, but very much alive and ready to reclaim her power. It started with cleaning out Philip's study. 3 weeks after serving him with divorce papers, I stood in the room that had been his private sanctuary, looking at the mahogany desk where he'd conducted business while I managed everything else in our lives. For the first time in decades, this space belonged entirely to me. I began by removing every trace of Philip. His business awards, his collection of expensive fountain pens, the humidor filled with Cuban cigars he'd never let me touch. With each item I packed away, I felt lighter, as if I was shedding the weight of decades spent orbiting around his needs and preferences. Then I sat down at his computer and did something I hadn't done in 25 years. I opened my old business files. Buried in digital archives and dusty folders were the marketing campaigns I'd created before marriage, the strategic plans I developed for luxury brands, the creative concepts that had made me one of the most promising young executives in Manhattan. Looking at that work, I realized something profound. I hadn't lost my professional skills during my years as a wife and mother. I'd simply applied them to managing Philip's life instead of building my own career. The charity galas I'd organized with military precision? That was event management and brand strategy. The dinner parties I'd hosted for Philip's business associates? That was relationship building and client entertainment. The household budgets I'd managed, the staff I'd supervised, the social connections I'd cultivated? All of it was transferable business experience. I had spent 25 years running the most complex project of my life, Philip's success, and now I was going to apply those skills to my own ambitions. My first venture was almost accidental. Eleanor Pemberton mentioned during one of our lunches that she was struggling to find someone reliable to plan her daughter's wedding. These event planners today have no sense of style or discretion, Eleanor complained. They all want to turn every wedding into some gaudy spectacle for social media. I need someone who understands elegance, who knows how to create an event that's sophisticated rather than flashy. What kind of budget are we talking about? I asked, more out of curiosity than genuine interest. $200,000 for the wedding itself, probably another $50,000 for the engagement party. But I'd pay double that to someone who could guarantee it would be done properly. That night, I created a comprehensive proposal for Eleanor's daughter's wedding. I researched vendors, designed themes, created timeline spreadsheets, and developed contingency plans for everything from weather to family drama. When I presented it to Eleanor the following week, her reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "This is exactly what I wanted. How did you know to suggest the string quartet from Lincoln Center? And this seating arrangement, you've somehow managed to put all the divorced couples at tables where they can't see each other. Monique, this is brilliant. Thank you, Eleanor. It's what I used to do professionally before I got married. Well, you need to start doing it again. I'm going to recommend you to everyone I know. Manhattan society desperately needs someone with your skills and taste." Within 2 months, I had booked 6 events. Within 4 months, I had hired 2 assistants and was turning away clients. Within 6 months, I had opened Hartwell Events, a luxury event planning company specializing in high-end weddings, charity galas, and corporate entertainment. But even as my business flourished, I realized I wanted more than just event planning. The old Monique, the ambitious MBA graduate who'd once dreamed of building a marketing empire, was awakening after decades of dormancy. I used the connections I'd made through Hartwell Events to launch my second venture, a luxury lifestyle consulting firm. Wealthy clients who'd hired me to plan their events began asking for help with other aspects of their lives, finding the right private schools for their children, selecting art for their homes, even choosing the perfect vacation destinations. "You have such exquisite taste," Victoria Chen told me after I'd helped her redecorate her Fifth Avenue apartment. And you're so discreet, so professional. I trust your judgment completely. Trust. It was something Philip had taken for granted and ultimately violated, but it was the foundation of every successful business relationship I built. My clients knew that their secrets were safe with me, that I would never gossip about their personal lives or use their private information for social currency. By the end of my first year in business, I had 3 companies: Hartwell Events, Hartwell Lifestyle, and Hartwell Properties, a luxury real estate consulting firm that helped wealthy clients find and purchase exclusive homes. Each business fed into the others, creating a comprehensive luxury services empire that generated more revenue than I'd ever imagined possible. But the financial success was only part of my transformation. The deeper change was psychological, emotional, spiritual even. For 25 years, I had defined myself entirely in relation to Philip. I was Philip's wife, the children's mother, the hostess of Philip's business dinners, the manager of Philip's household. My worth was measured by how well I supported his success, how seamlessly I anticipated his needs, how perfectly I played the role of the accomplished businessman's wife. Now, for the first time since college, I was defining myself by my own accomplishments, my own goals, my own vision for the future. I bought new clothes, not the conservative, appropriate outfits that befitted Philip's wife, but bold, fashionable pieces that reflected my personal style. I cut my hair into a sleek bob that made me look 10 years younger. I hired a personal trainer and discovered that I actually enjoyed working out when it wasn't about maintaining my appearance for someone else's approval. Most importantly, I began making decisions based entirely on what I wanted rather than what others expected of me. When Marcus suggested I should consider dating again, I told him I wasn't interested in replacing one relationship with another just to avoid being alone. Mom, you're still young, still beautiful. Don't you want companionship? Marcus, for the first time in my adult life, I'm getting to know who I am when I'm not taking care of someone else. I'm not lonely, I'm liberated. And I was. The apartment I'd rented in Soho while the divorce proceedings continued wasn't just a temporary living space, it was a declaration of independence. I decorated it entirely to my own taste, filled it with art I loved rather than pieces that matched Philip's conservative aesthetic, and created a home office where I could build my business empire without interruption or compromise. The evenings I'd once spent waiting for Philip to come home from work or accompanying him to business dinners were now mine to fill however I chose. Some nights I worked late on client projects, driven by the intoxicating satisfaction of building something that belonged entirely to me. Other nights I attended theater performances, art gallery openings, or simply stayed home reading books I'd never had time for during my marriage. I was discovering parts of myself that had been dormant for decades. The strategic thinker who could analyze market trends and identify business opportunities. The creative visionary who could transform ordinary spaces into spectacular events. The natural leader who could inspire employees and earn client loyalty through competence rather than charm. But perhaps most importantly, I was learning that I didn't need anyone else's validation to feel valuable. Philip's betrayal had initially made me question my worth, wonder what I'd done wrong, how I'd failed as a wife. But building my own success from scratch had shown me that I was stronger, smarter, and more capable than I'd ever imagined. The woman who'd once felt invisible in her own home was now commanding boardrooms and closing million-dollar deals. The wife who'd been dismissed as busy with meaningless charity work was now running 3 profitable companies. The faithful spouse who'd been replaced by a younger model was now being courted by successful, attractive men who saw her as an equal rather than an accessory. I was 48 years old and I was just getting started. But life had one more surprise in store for me, a reminder that sometimes the best things come when you're not looking for them, when you're finally complete enough on your own to choose love rather than need it. I met Jonathan Powell on a Tuesday afternoon in the conference room of the Carlisle Hotel, and from the first moment he spoke, I knew he was different from every man I'd encountered in Manhattan's business circles. "Mrs. Hartwell," he said, rising from his chair as I entered the room, "I've heard remarkable things about your work. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me." He was tall, silver-haired, with intelligent gray eyes that actually looked at me, Not through me, not around me, but directly at me with genuine interest and respect. At 52, Jonathan carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had nothing to prove but everything to offer. Please call me Monique. And the pleasure is mine, Mr. Powell. Your foundation's work in educational reform is impressive. Jonathan, then. And thank you, though I have to say, after reviewing your portfolio, I think we're the ones who should be impressed. Building 3 successful companies in less than 2 years? That's the kind of entrepreneurial vision we need for our upcoming gala. The meeting had been arranged by one of my clients, who knew that Jonathan's foundation was looking for someone to plan their annual fundraising event, a sophisticated affair that would raise money for underprivileged children's education programs. It was exactly the kind of meaningful project I'd been hoping to take on. But as we discussed the details of the event, I found myself drawn to something beyond the professional opportunity. Jonathan asked thoughtful questions, listened carefully to my responses, and treated my expertise with the kind of respect I'd been craving for decades without even realizing it. Your approach to donor engagement is fascinating, he said as I outlined my strategy for maximizing fundraising impact. Most event planners focus purely on the aesthetic elements, but you're thinking about the psychological and emotional journey of the attendees. Well, yes. If you want people to open their wallets for a cause, you have to make them feel personally connected to the mission. It's not enough to serve good champagne and hire a decent band. Jonathan smiled, not the patronizing smile I'd grown accustomed to from Philip's business associates, but a smile of genuine appreciation and understanding. You know, I've been doing this work for 15 years, and I've never heard anyone articulate that concept so clearly. Would you be interested in joining our board of directors? We could use someone with your strategic thinking. It was a generous offer, and one that recognized my abilities rather than just my social connections. In Philip's world, I'd been invited to charity boards because I was Mrs. Philip Hartwell, wife of a successful real estate developer. Jonathan was inviting me because of my own skills and insights. Over the following weeks, as we worked together on the gala planning, our professional relationship deepened into something more personal. Jonathan would call with questions about venue logistics, and somehow we'd end up discussing philosophy, art, or politics for an hour. He'd stop by my office to review catering options and stay to share stories about his work with inner-city schools. You have a remarkable perspective on life, he told me one evening as we finished reviewing the final guest list for the gala. You've been through something difficult recently, haven't you? I can sense a kind of resilience in you. A strength that's been tested and proven. I looked up from the spreadsheet we'd been reviewing, surprised by his perceptiveness. Most people in my social circle politely avoided any mention of my divorce, treating it like an embarrassing secret rather than a life event. My marriage ended recently, I said simply. It wasn't easy, but it led me to discoveries about myself I never would have made otherwise. That takes tremendous courage, rebuilding your life from scratch, creating something new rather than just surviving what came before. I had help from good lawyers and better friends, I said with a smile. But yes, it required a certain amount of courage I didn't know I possessed. Well, from where I'm sitting, the results have been extraordinary. Your businesses, your independence, your confidence, it's all quite inspiring. There it was again, that word I'd been missing for so long. Inspiring. Not supportive, not accommodating, not helpful. Inspiring. Our first real date happened almost by accident. The gala had been a tremendous success, raising nearly $2 million for the foundation, and Jonathan had insisted on taking me to dinner to celebrate. This isn't a business meeting, he said as we settled into our table at Le Bernardin, ironically the same restaurant where Philip had taken Cynthia during their affair. This is me asking if you'd like to spend the evening with me because I enjoy your company and I'd like to get to know you better. It was such a refreshingly direct approach. No games, no manipulation, no hidden agendas. Just honest interest from a man who valued my mind as much as my appearance. Over dinner, Jonathan told me about his previous marriage, a partnership that had ended amicably when they both realized they'd grown in different directions. He'd been single for 3 years, focusing on his foundation work and his 2 adult children who lived in California. I wasn't looking for anyone, he said. After my divorce, I thought I was done with relationships. But meeting you changed that perspective entirely. How so? You're so self-possessed, so clear about who you are and what you want. It's refreshing to meet a woman who doesn't need me to complete her but might choose to share her life with me because she enjoys my company. The contrast with Philip couldn't have been starker. Philip had pursued me when I was young and uncertain, molding me into the wife he wanted rather than appreciating the woman I was. Jonathan was interested in me precisely because I was complete, successful, and independent. Our relationship developed slowly, carefully, with the kind of mutual respect I'd never experienced before. Jonathan never made assumptions about my time or my priorities. He asked before making plans, consulted me before making decisions that affected us both, and celebrated my business successes with genuine pride rather than threatened ego. I love watching you work, he told me after sitting in on a client meeting where I'd just closed a significant deal. You're so competent, so confident. It's incredibly attractive. For the first time in my adult life, I was in a relationship where my strength was seen as an asset rather than a threat, which made Philip's reappearance in my life all the more jarring. It happened on a Thursday evening, 6 months after I'd caught him with Cynthia, 3 months after our divorce had been finalized, and 2 months after I'd started seeing Jonathan regularly. I was working late in my Soho office when my assistant buzzed me. Mrs. Hartwell, your ex-husband is here to see you. Should I tell him you're not available? No, send him in. Let's get this over with. Philip entered my office looking older than his 53 years, his usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled, his confident posture replaced by something approaching humility. Monique, you look incredible. I was wearing a navy blue Armani suit that I'd bought to celebrate landing my biggest client, my hair styled in the sophisticated bob that had become my signature look, my makeup professionally applied for a photo shoot that afternoon for Manhattan Magazine's Women in Business feature. Thank you. What can I do for you, Philip? I wanted to talk to you about us. About what happened. There is no us, Philip. Our marriage ended when you decided to sleep with our housekeeper. Our divorce was finalized 3 months ago. What exactly did you think we needed to discuss? Philip shifted uncomfortably, clearly having expected a different reception. I made a terrible mistake, Monique. The biggest mistake of my life. I've been thinking about it every day since you left, and I realize how much I threw away. You mean how much you threw away when you got caught? No, I mean how much I threw away when I betrayed the best thing that ever happened to me. His voice took on the persuasive tone I remembered from our early courtship. Cynthia was nothing. A moment of weakness, a foolish distraction. What we had was real, Monique. 25 years of building a life together. You can't throw that away over one mistake. I leaned back in my chair, studying the man I'd once loved with every fiber of my being, feeling nothing but mild curiosity about his desperation. One mistake, Philip? You had an affair for 6 months. You used our anniversary dinner as cover for your betrayal. You told another woman you loved her while lying to me every single day. Which specific mistake are you referring to? All of it. Everything. I was going through something, a midlife crisis, I guess. I felt old, irrelevant. Cynthia made me feel young again, but it wasn't real. It was just ego. Vanity. It meant nothing. It meant our marriage. But it doesn't have to, Philip said, leaning forward urgently. People get past infidelity all the time. We can go to counseling, work through this together. We can rebuild what we had. I stared at him for a long moment, wondering if he genuinely believed what he was saying or if this was just another manipulation. Philip, what exactly do you think we had that's worth rebuilding? Our life together. Our history. Our partnership. Our partnership? I almost laughed. Philip, for 25 years I was your employee, not your partner. I managed your schedule, your social life, your household, and your children's lives so you could focus entirely on your career and your pleasure. When you needed a wife to impress clients, I played the role. When you needed a hostess for business dinners, I organized them. When you needed someone to manage the inconvenient details of daily life, I handled them. But partners? We were never partners. Philip's face reddened. That's not fair. You chose to focus on the family while I built our financial security. You were happy with that arrangement. I was happy because I thought it was temporary. I was happy because I believed you when you said my career could wait until the children were older. I was happy because I loved you and I trusted you. But I was never your partner, Philip. I was your employee with benefits. You're being ridiculous. We were married for 25 years. We raised 3 children together. We built a life. You built a life. I built your life. There's a difference. Philip stood up, his frustration evident. Fine. Maybe I wasn't perfect. Maybe I took you for granted sometimes. But look at what you're throwing away, Monique. Look at what we could have together. What could we have together, Philip? More years of me anticipating your needs while you ignore mine? More dinner parties where I smile and play the perfect hostess while you conduct business? The more nights where you claim you're too tired for intimacy while you're actually planning your next affair? It wouldn't be like that. I've learned my lesson. I know what I lost. You haven't lost anything, Philip. You threw it away. And frankly, I'm grateful that you did, because it forced me to discover who I am when I'm not spending all my energy making you look good. I gestured around my office, at the awards on my walls, the photographs from successful events, the evidence of the empire I'd built. This is who I am, Philip. I'm not the accommodating wife who puts your needs first anymore. I'm not the woman who waits at home while you travel the world for business. I'm not the person who defines herself by how well she supports your success. I'm a successful businesswoman in my own right, and I like this version of myself much better than the version I was when I was married to you. Philip's expression shifted from pleading to calculating. You're seeing someone, aren't you? That's what this is really about. Some rebound relationship that's made you think you don't need our marriage anymore. And there it was, the assumption that my rejection of him must be about another man, that I couldn't possibly be complete or happy on my own. I am seeing someone, I said calmly. Someone who treats me as an equal rather than an accessory. Someone who celebrates my success rather than feeling threatened by it. Someone who asks for my opinion rather than assuming I'll agree with whatever he decides. Who is he? That's none of your business. Some younger man? Someone who's using you for your money? 'Cause that's all this is, Monique. You're having a midlife crisis of your own, thinking some new relationship can replace 25 years of marriage. I smiled then, genuinely amused by his predictable assumptions. Actually, Philip, he's 52, successful in his own right, and completely uninterested in my money. But the most important thing about him is that he chose me. Not the version of me that I might become if I changed to suit his preferences, but the version of me that exists right now, today, as a complete and independent person. Philip stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the exact moment he realized he'd lost this battle completely. I made a mistake, Monique. One mistake that cost me everything. No, Philip. You made the mistake of thinking I would always be there no matter how badly you treated me. You made the mistake of believing your own narrative about our marriage, that you were the star and I was just the supporting cast. And you made the mistake of underestimating how strong I would become once I stopped using all my strength to hold up your ego. I stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. Our marriage is finished, Philip. It was finished the moment you chose to betray 25 years of trust for 6 months with a girl half your age. I'm not angry anymore, and I'm not hurt. I'm grateful. You forced me to discover that I'm much happier as my own person than I ever was as your wife. As Philip left my office, defeated and diminished, I realized something profound. I felt nothing. No satisfaction from his obvious regret, no temptation to reconsider his proposal, no residual anger about his betrayal. He simply didn't matter to me anymore. The man who had once been the center of my universe had become irrelevant to my happiness. And that, I thought as I returned to planning my next business expansion, was the greatest victory of all. 2 years have passed since that devastating anniversary night when I discovered my husband's betrayal, and as I sit in my corner office overlooking Madison Avenue, I can honestly say that Philip's affair was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because betrayal is pleasant, those first few weeks were among the darkest of my life, but because it forced me to stop living someone else's dream and start building my own. The legal closure came first, of course. Catherine Morrison had been as ruthless as promised, and the final divorce settlement left me with the brownstones, 60% of Philip's business assets, and enough alimony to live comfortably for the rest of my life. But more importantly, it left me with something I'd never truly had during my marriage: complete financial independence. "You could retire tomorrow if you wanted," Catherine told me as we reviewed the final papers. "You'd never have to work another day in your life." "But why would I want to do that?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. "I'm just getting started." And I was. Hartwell Companies had grown beyond anything I'd imagined possible. My event planning business now had offices in New York, Los Angeles, and Miami. My lifestyle consulting firm had a waiting list 6 months long. My real estate venture had just closed its largest deal, helping a tech billionaire find and purchase a $50 million estate in the Hamptons. But the numbers, impressive as they were, weren't the real measure of my success. The real victory was in who I'd become. I woke up every morning excited about the challenges of the day ahead. I made decisions based on my own judgment and lived with the consequences, good or bad, without having to consult anyone else. I traveled when I wanted to travel, worked the hours I chose to work, and surrounded myself with people who respected my intelligence rather than merely tolerating my presence. The emotional closure took longer, but it was ultimately more satisfying than the legal victory. 4 months after the divorce, I found myself cycling through different emotions about my failed marriage. Anger at Philip's betrayal, certainly, but also grief for the 25 years I devoted to building something that turned out to be an illusion. Regret for the career opportunities I'd passed up, the dreams I'd deferred, the aspects of myself I'd suppressed to be the wife Philip wanted. But gradually, those negative emotions were replaced by something unexpected: gratitude. Not gratitude for the betrayal itself, but gratitude for the wake-up call it provided. Without Philip's affair, I might have spent another 25 years living a half-life, defining myself by someone else's achievements, settling for being needed rather than being valued. The woman I am now, confident, successful, independent, happy, might never have existed if Philip had been faithful. I would have continued to be Mrs. Philip Hartwell, gracious hostess and devoted wife, never knowing that I was capable of building my own empire. My relationship with Jonathan deepened slowly, built on a foundation of mutual respect that I'd never experienced in my marriage. 6 months ago he proposed, not with a demand that I merge my life into his, but with an invitation to create something new together. "I don't want you to be my wife," he said as we walked through Central Park on a crisp autumn evening. "I want you to be my partner. I want us to build something together while we each continue building our individual dreams." The contrast with Philip's approach to marriage couldn't have been starker. Philip had wanted a wife who would accommodate his needs, support his ambitions, and provide a beautiful backdrop for his success. Jonathan wanted a partner who would challenge him, inspire him, and share the adventure of building 2 successful lives that complemented rather than competed with each other. We're planning a wedding for next spring, a small, elegant affair that reflects who we are now rather than who we're expected to be. My children are thrilled. Marcus told me recently that he'd never seen me happier, more confident, more myself. "You're like a different person, Mom," Sarah said during our last lunch together. Not different in a bad way, different in the way someone is when they finally become who they were always meant to be. Even my relationship with Philip has settled into something resembling peace. We interact cordially at family events, focused entirely on our shared children and grandchildren. He remarried last year, a woman closer to his own age who seems to understand exactly what she's signing up for. I genuinely hope they're happy together, though I suspect Philip is incapable of the kind of partnership that creates lasting happiness. Cynthia, I heard through the Manhattan Domestic Employment Network, eventually found work with a family in Connecticut. The last I heard, she was engaged to their gardener, a kind man her own age who treats her with respect rather than using her as an escape from his responsibilities. As for me, I wake up every morning in love with my life. I have work that challenges and fulfills me, a man who sees me as an equal partner, children who respect the choices I've made, and friendships built on genuine connection rather than social obligation. But perhaps most importantly, I have something I'd lost during my marriage: complete comfort with my own company. I can spend an evening alone without feeling lonely, make major decisions without seeking external validation, and define my worth by my own accomplishments rather than someone else's approval. The woman who once felt invisible in her own home now commands boardrooms with confidence. The wife who was dismissed as busy with meaningless charity work now runs companies that employ dozens of people and generate millions in revenue. The faithful spouse who was replaced by a younger model now chooses her romantic partners based on compatibility rather than need. I'm 50 years old and I've never been happier or more confident in who I am. If you're watching this story and you recognize yourself in the woman I used to be, if you're putting someone else's dreams ahead of your own, if you're defining yourself entirely by your relationship to another person, if you're settling for being needed rather than being valued, please remember this: it is never too late to choose yourself. It doesn't matter if you've been married for 25 years or 25 days. It doesn't matter if you've built your entire identity around supporting someone else's success. Doesn't matter if you think you're too old, too settled, too invested in your current life to make a change. You are never too old to discover who you are when you stop using all your energy to be who someone else wants you to be. You are never too settled to build something new and better. You are never too invested in the wrong thing to start investing in the right thing. My marriage ended on our 25th anniversary when I discovered my husband's betrayal. But my real life began the next morning, when I decided to stop being Philip's wife and start being Monique's own person. The betrayal hurt. The divorce was difficult. The process of rebuilding was sometimes overwhelming. But choosing myself, choosing to prioritize my own dreams, my own goals, my own happiness, was the best decision I ever made. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. Give us a like if you enjoyed this story. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen you can see two new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. By the way, don't forget to subscribe. It encourages me to keep bringing more stories like this. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.